BBL 851, turn right, heading 180. 14 Papa, turn right 245, report localizer established 27.
It's been a quiet start to the week, so what better opportunity than now to bring back a series many have enjoyed but has been missing for a while on the channel, and that's aviation news recap videos, covering stories that did not get their own video but are now compiled into one in almost bite-sized format. Today's coverage centres around a new order, first flights, difficulties within the aviation industry, and much more. We begin proceedings though over at Air France with their very first Airbus A220 recently completing its maiden flight as it ramps up its final testing before eventually being delivered to the European carrier in September, that now only being next month and days away. Departing Quebec in Canada on the 26th of August, the aircraft underwent a number of tests known as a production flight to understand that all the fittings during final assembly at the Airbus factory in Canada had been done to an adequate level to prove the aircraft is indeed safe. Air France has overall quite a big backing in the Airbus A220 program, with an order currently standing at 60 for the type. The plan is for them to eventually replace all their aging A318s and A319s in the future with these very A220s that you hear me talking about today, which will therefore be widely seen across their short to medium haul network in and around Europe. This is overall a major boost for the airline in the long term, thanks to not only their geographical location within Europe, meaning they are very close to major destinations and hubs for other airlines and countries, but also they will now have the fuel-efficient A220 that they can equip for the future. Virgin Australia are our next topic, who announced they will be adding another 9 additional 737-800 aircraft from this October to better help them with the domestic demand within Australia. This is a decision that comes from the board as vaccination rates rise, and the airline deems with these rises in vaccination rates, subsequently borders between states will reopen, with many looking to travel as soon as possible. Is this going to be the right decision for the airline though? Only time will tell, but under current assumptions and current cases, Australia's intra-borders could remain closed for a significant period of time now, as not only are states reluctant to leave lockdown, but cases are rising every single day. They simply don't want to open their borders to states in lockdowns. The airline, as I said though, will see its first of 9 additional units arrive into their operations from October. However, overall, the aircraft will continue to be delivered all the way through to the beginning of next year, when by the second month, that being February, they do anticipate to be flying with all the additional aircraft. The Virgin Australia CEO said, "While our recent efforts have been directed toward adapting to and managing through a very difficult few months for communities and businesses throughout the country, we've also maintained a consistent focus on our strategy and medium-term growth opportunities. These extra aircraft are an important part of our planning and ensure we're ready to ramp up flying and meet the pent-up demand for domestic travel as soon as the opportunity presents itself," which, like I said before, there's no real clear date on when that opportunity will present itself, but I would say it may most likely be after October, when all of Australia opens up for domestic operations. Virgin Australia recently entered into administration at the beginning of the pandemic and said goodbye to aircraft like their Boeing 777s. It has therefore come out of the pandemic as ultimately a much smaller airline, but also a more domestic-focused airline, rather than those, say, routes through to Los Angeles like what we saw before the pandemic and what I have personally flown on. The Boeing 737 MAX continues to be greeted with positive news, as Boeing announced within the past week the Indian Civil Aviation Regulator and them had signed an agreement that would allow India to lift the ban imposed on flying the 737 MAX within the country commercially with Indian carriers. This is a massive boost to operators in the country looking at flying as the pandemic eventually hopefully eases to a point where operations can return to, you'd like to say, full normality. India follow in the footsteps of a number of other regulators that have cleared the aircraft to fly within their own respective countries or regions, and is for Boeing another vote of confidence that the aircraft is indeed safe now after many years of fixing, tweaking, and getting the aircraft perfect. Once again, the aircraft should have been perfect, you would argue, from the very start, but at least it's a positive that they have reworked the aircraft to a point now where it can be deemed safe, properly you'd like to think, by all regulators around the world. For Boeing, though, they are still looking at seeing their 737 MAX ban lifted in China. Only recently, we saw the aircraft manufacturer send an aircraft there for a rather short period to conduct testing before heading back to Boeing's home in Seattle, really only a few days later. Word on how those specific tests went have not yet surfaced, and we are still awaiting some firm news with regards to the Boeing 737 MAX in China, and you'd like to think we could expect that relatively soon. Although original estimates noted that Boeing may not receive word on the 737 MAX being cleared within China until year's end. For American Airlines, the worsening situation with cases in the United States means for them, their bookings are taking a massive hit, and revenue could once again drop significantly in not the most amazing news to come out of the United States, where I'd argue in recent months, I've been widely documenting the industry there and taking a look at airlines who have been loving the success with borders reopening and a lot of people traveling again. American Airlines noted that not only are they seeing a massive decrease in bookings for the coming months, but they're actually experiencing a large number of cancellations. While the United States rapidly increased their vaccinations in past months, that rate has sadly now slowed down and has left a lot of citizens unvaccinated. This poses a major concern for travel and, in addition, overall protection for Americans and so forth. Carriers are now feeling the heat. I briefly covered the experience over at Southwest in recent days, but it's evident that this is not only impacting American Airlines, but all airlines within the country, who will once again be hoping for better days so they can continue to maintain, you would argue, a positive revenue and not sink into those losses, just as they were beginning to see their business recover. Not only do moments like these impact an airline's flight schedule, but they also hamper expected growth and the hiring of employees, and ultimately all-round staffing. The pandemic saw American Airlines, like basically any airline, retire a number of aircraft types, and therefore in addition say goodbye to tens of thousands of staff members to cope with the now reduced fleet. The resurgence for the summer period left American Airlines not prepared, and resulted therefore in mass cancellations of flights. They subsequently went about looking to hire more pilots and more staff, and now they're seeing bookings once again fall. It's an absolute worst case scenario and makes life near on impossible for these airlines. There's talk now that the European Union could be imposing restrictions on Americans, which is another worst case scenario for these carriers, and of course citizens that would love to see their loved ones. In our final topic of the day, a Boeing 767 with cargo jet suffered a tail strike during its takeoff procedure while departing on a regular routine flight from Japan through to Canada. The aircraft specifically impacted was that of a 767-300 with the cargo operator. However, rather than returning to the airport, that being Narita, they continued through to Vancouver, where the aircraft eventually landed. Upon landing, inspections were done, but thankfully it did not sustain damage that was deemed so severe that it needed to be repaired and so forth. That's going to conclude today's aviation news recap. I hope you did enjoy it. If you'd like to see more of these, feel free to let me know. Until the next video, take care, be safe, and I will see you next time.